Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Balance Sheet. I'm Billy with my co-host Raj here. We have a lot to talk about today, and uh, you know, for anyone who's been listening for a long time, thanks for coming back. For anyone that's new here, we're going to get right into it, recapping women's wrestling and really the business side of women's wrestling. And this is one of those episodes where I think we're right in our wheelhouse. We got to talk the WrestleMania card, who's going to be on it, who might not be on it, the unfortunate side of the business with a couple WWE releases this week. And then AEW, we'll start there. I thought really, really good show last night. And Raj, we were talking before we started here. You agreed. What'd you think of Collision last night?
I don't normally watch Collision unless I know pre I guess whatever they call it, pre going live, that there are significant women's segments on the show that I'm going to be interested in. So I saw, you might have been you who retweeted it. Somebody, Mercedes is going to be on Collision. So I'm like, okay, let me go, to my DVR and tape it so I can definitely watch it. And I gotta say, that was one of my favorite, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, Mercedes. It's definitely my favorite post WWE Mercedes segment, other than when she came out in Big Business and the first interaction she had with Britt, where Britt came out and I think, they got in each other's face and she did the whole push when she
Yeah.
pushed her head. I was so entertained by the segment with Harley Cameron. They did the old school rock concert. That's kind of what that segment was. She comes out with the guitar, she gets the crowd hype. She's, making fun of her opponent in a song. Mercedes comes out. Are you stupid? Are you dumb? They get in the ring. Crowd's really hot for Harley. They're cheering for her. They knew the assignment, as they say. They knew how to like amp up the intensity. Mercedes pushes her or slaps her. Harley had an all-time, comeback about the most entertaining you've ever been in your career is when I had, my hand up your puppet's ass. I was laughing at that. I thought that was great. And then
Yep.
Harley just clocked her at the end, and the crowd was going crazy for Harley. They were like, Harley, Harley. And Mercedes, because even heels, you can push their buttons. And even though Mercedes is right, technically on paper, Harley Cameron with one win does not deserve this match. She is actually correct about it. She baited her. She outsmarted her. She said, okay, you get the match in your home city, in your home country. I can't wait to make you look bad. These two on screen together, I didn't expect it. They have great chemistry. They
They
feed
do.
off each other very, very well. I thought that was a tremendous segment. The other segment that obviously happened on this show, well, I know Megan Bain wrestled also, but you had Mariah May wrestles somebody. Who did she wrestle? The opponent.
Uh, Carmichael.
Carmichael, thank
Uh,
you. And then
yeah.
she did the whole thing where she dressed her up like Toni Storm. Luther returns with the shoe. She goes back to beat up Carmichael. It's actually Toni Storm now, who looks just like Carmichael or looks like herself, gets up, headbutts her, crowd's going crazy. Excellent, excellent segments. Both segments were great. That's exactly what I want to see at AEW on every show with the women. And it doesn't always have to just be a Mariah and a Mercedes produced segment or Tony. I'd like to see other women get these kind of segments. It can really help to get them over as characters. As much as AEW fancies itself as we're the in-ring wrestling company of North America, doesn't matter. Entertainment is a big part of wrestling.
Yeah.
Most of our favorite wrestlers have probably gotten over in their career because of segments that did not happen in the ring. I mean, is Bret Hart the rare exception where he got over because of his actual wrestling ability? Where he just became the best there is because of he was the best in the ring. But even HBK, for as great as he was, the barbershop segment put him on the map,
Put him on the map. Yeah,
right?
it starts there. Yeah.
If you look at Macho Man, Elizabeth, all the vignettes with Elizabeth backstage put him on the map. You look at Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle would cut that promo before they wrestled. The city sucks. I'm your Olympic gold medalist. Like, you got to get over besides just wrestling. I think Harley's been great. I'm torn on this match before I pass the baton back to you because I could justify Harley winning. I know people are going to listen to this and laugh, but I can see it because it's the upset of the century. It's the miracle on ice. It's Villanova beating Georgetown, which when it happens, it is a feel-good story and people get behind it. And I think for a company that is dying to make new stars and doesn't seem to know how to do it, they have something with Harley Cameron. Mercedes is good enough and maybe one of the best ever. She is one of the best ever. Maybe she is the best ever at winning a match and still getting the other person completely over so she could pull it off. But man, they have something in Harley Cameron. People like her. People want to cheer for her. And do you just beat her? Do you just have her win the match? I don't know. But it looks like it's going to be Toni Storm winning the title in Australia. And what if Harley wins, but then Mercedes then sets her sights to Tony's title? Do we finally get that feud?
Yeah. So you put in the group chat last night, that segment was so good. I could see Harley winning.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's crazy. And I watched the segment back a second time and I get where you're going. I think Tony is going to be the big homecoming win. I don't know that they pull that trigger twice. I would say this 100%. If Mercedes had already lost once in AEW, you book her to lose against Harley because you're not protecting like the first loss ever. It's
Hmm.
just an upset. I think the main reason you can't do it is Tony's got to make money on that first loss. Like
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
he but on the flip side, if Mercedes were to lose, I don't think I have her go after Tony. I think Harley would win, and then you'd come back at the pay-per-view and have Mercedes beat her and get the title back, and just have kind of that feel-good moment, a little run. Um, but there's a couple different directions. At the end of the day, the great thing is that everyone's invested. I saw a bunch of people from the crew who were like, Harley Cameron, I can't believe this is her feud. And they really weren't buying into it. And then after last night, we're just like, all right, I'm in. This is great. They're fun on the screen together. Um, Mercedes is kind of able to be just awful and at her best.
Mhm.
And they really kind of slow baked this one because last night was our first segment of them actually in front of people. I mean, everything else has been um, backstage type, kind of this. I think the one thing they messed up, they basically did the same scene twice, right outside the locker room, and that's my where my criticism comes from because I love last night's show. Why doesn't any of this stuff happen on Dynamite, man? Last night's show was better than any Dynamite beginning to end. That I, yeah, for the most part, especially for the women, than I can recall, right? And it just it it seems like it was written by a different person. I went to a Dynamite a week and a half ago, you know, and the way the show was laid out did not flow entertainment wise the way that one did. And I get they want to showcase the wrestling and all that, but if they could find like a balance, and there was an argument on Twitter this week about WWE fans are just sucked into the entertainment side and they don't care about in ring, and AEW fans, the in ring matters. Guys, is a really easy answer. It's both. It's both.
Mhm. Yeah.
You should care about what happens in the ring, people promoting each other and popping you with one-liners and entertaining promos, it doesn't really matter if they can't have a match that entertain. The match needs to matter and be entertaining as well. There's not one side to this; it's both. Both matter, or else it's just UFC or boxing, right? Or it's just a
Mhm.
soap opera. That's why wrestling's great. It's both. But yeah, I thought Collision was fantastic.
You're a boxing fan. I know
Yeah.
this. When Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson, everybody thought it was like this huge upset. But
Hmm.
Holyfield used to spar with Tyson all the time. So he knew
And was
his
not afraid.
tendencies, was not
Yeah.
afraid. Harley Cameron, they haven't told the story yet, but Mercedes has trained with her
Yep.
and has always been very fond of her. So if they build up to this match correctly, which I think is next week, right? Because
Yeah.
it's in Australia, so it's the whole after the NBA All-Star game, we're gonna go to this event to get the streaming record numbers, to get the record TV audience kind of thing. If they told that story where they're like Harley is trained with her, Harley helped her from the injury and knows her tendencies and picked up things for the upset. See, I thought the way this feud is going, this is kind of what I hoped for with the Brit segments, where it just got better and better and better. And finally, when they got to the match, they had this all-time match, and it's a great feud. I don't know how, I mean, Harley's very raw still in the ring, right? Like she's not had the years of experience. Could Mercedes pull out a classic out of her? Probably. She's that good. But if you give Harley the win, then you got to follow up with it. And if your plan is let's give Harley the win just to have her lose it back to Mercedes, that's no good. That doesn't help anybody at this point. Because then to your point, you didn't protect the first loss. Right? The
Yeah.
first loss, you almost it's like the way I would tell the story, and I know they won't do it. Mercedes loses, but loses because the ref made some kind of mistake. But Harley wins. Mercedes says, I get my rematch, and if I win, that's erased from the record. And they literally like use that. Mercedes wins the belt back and then says, I want tape of this erased. Like they almost have to kayfabe it where you can't even get the footage of it on Max. It's like it doesn't, it's like it blacked out. Like you have to do it like that, where it's like almost like people bring it up to her. Like she has a feud with Willow in the future or Chris or Tony, and Tony goes, remember when Harley beat you? And she's like, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. I've never lost. Like you have to almost feed into her delusion. You could do it that way. I don't know though, man. Like I was just so entertained by it. And you're right. What you said is correct. It has to be both. We should not, as wrestling fans, accept one being good and the other sucking and saying we're okay with it. It's both. The entertainment has to be good. The in-ring stuff has to be good. I
Yeah.
mean, again, we've had this conversation on this podcast for weeks. You can have the greatest vignettes, backstage segments, promo battles of all time. And then the match happens and it's not good. Everybody, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. Do you remember the angle that they did with Charlotte, Ronda, Becky before the match at Mania? Where they had the
The
backstage segments,
the
the
police.
brawl. Yes, the famous Charlotte
Awesome.
knee.
Yeah.
Okay, that segment had me thinking, oh my goodness, these women are gonna have an all-time classic. Like
Yep.
I that was the only time in that whole setup for the feud. I was like, okay, I'm fine with Charlotte being in this feud.
Made
It's fine.
WWE look like geniuses for a
I was
couple
like,
minutes because it
you know
was
what?
hot.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, you know what? Charlotte, you're in this feud. I'll get Becky Ronda down the road, but I'm invested. And then the match happened. And that WrestleMania was paced so poorly to begin with. I
Ugh.
think it was like a 7 hour WrestleMania or something. And I remember waiting late at night to watch that match. And the entrances are great and everybody's happy. And then the bell actually rings. It was choppy, it was sloppy. Um, like and the reason I know I was right is Becky was cold right after that. Like she was cold. Charlotte was cold until blue-haired Mercedes came back or Sasha came back. Becky was still cold. Charlotte was doing these weird things with Bailey. It wasn't good. And so for me, you got to have the ring, the in-ring component has to deliver. But when has Mercedes not delivered in the ring? Like it's been rare
Yeah.
historically for her not to deliver. So I think she'll deliver here. And Harley being a practice partner of hers, I think bodes well for the match.
Mercedes is famous for not really, her best stuff is not practiced.
Mm-hmm.
Asuka and her never trained together. They've kind of just always gone into the ring and called the matches. Her and Bailey trained together, but they famously did not um, work through the Brooklyn match because they were Mercedes was basically on main roster at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that this is a rare scenario where I would bet that Mercedes has laid out part of this match already with Harley before they even pitch it to management, basically. Um, I agree with you that if Harley wins and then Mercedes wins, at the end of the day, what does it do? That's because I just don't think you could have Mercedes lose this match. I do, however, think we've got a 2.99 pinfall in our future that's
Oh
going to
yeah.
just kill us. Um, and I trust Mercedes to put someone over in a with the other person losing better than just about anyone out there. So I think that's what we're getting. No, on the flip side, after you said you thought Harley was winning, I recalled how many times Will Ospreay's lost already,
Mhm.
and I said, hey, you know what? Tony does pull the trigger sometimes, but the difference I think is you've already gone this long without Mercedes losing, and I think you have to sell some pay-per-views on it
Mhm.
or tickets on it. And Harley and her, as much as this is Harley's hometown, it was kind of a throw in, right?
Yeah,
But they've just done a lot with it.
they
Um,
have.
Speaking of Mariah and Tony, do we think, is it going to main event?
Yeah, it is.
Is it? You think
Hmm.
so?
Yeah, I do.
Thinking of the men's matches and all that, but it's got a main event, right?
I think it's going to main event, and I actually think Mercedes and Harley opens the show. That's my prediction.
That's a hot open too.
I
Yeah.
think it opens the show because you get the biggest star you have to an audience that does actually recognize her, right? If you think about it,
Oh
NBA
yeah.
All-Star Game is going to end, and they're probably going to do some tie-in where Kevin Harlan or whoever is like, okay, we're going to Australia for AEW.
Is
People
it the
do
game
know.
or is it the
It's Saturday night, right? It's
yeah.
the dunk contest and that stuff. They
Hmm.
sure picked the worst year to do this for AEW because, like, okay, now we're gonna date ourselves, but there was a time where the dunk contest was like the talk of the sports world for a weekend, right? Like it was like,
Right.
oh my goodness, like we're gonna get to see Vince Carter, Jordan, Neek, even Levine and Aaron Gordon killed it.
Right.
I don't know who's in the dunk contest this year. I know Matt McClung is back. Like, are people going to be even watching this thing? But if the
But
3-point contest ends because Steph Curry is in it, is Steph in it in
I
the
think
3-point
so.
contest?
I know Cade's in it. He's not going to win, but Cade's
Well,
in it.
no, but it's good. It's good experience. I mean,
Yeah.
look, if this was wrestling, this would be set up. This would be rigged for Steph to win, right? Like they would
Yeah.
literally tell the other guys, "Look, you're going to make it look good, but you're not winning. Steph's got to win because it's in Golden State or in San Francisco." So, okay, you go to AEW, but like you could put her on the screen And people who are watching this are like, oh my God, that's Sasha Banks, right? Like that's
They have to. They have to. They
right. So
have to.
then you can get the audience. And I think Toni has to main event because this is her story arc, right? Like she lost the belt. She's getting it back. Like she lost the belt in Mariah May's home city. She is winning it in her home city. Like, I think this is the plan. This has to be it. And Toni should main event because I'm biased here, and I know you are as well. There's nothing on the men's side of AEW that feels as hot as what they're doing anyway.
Yeah. I
So,
I I
yeah.
I'd love. I think Toni's momentum since she's been back. I mean, the crowd has been great for her. The Huntsville show I went to, them recapping, going from Rocker Tony to Timeless Tony, which also freaking happened on Collision the week before.
Mm,
When they recapped it on the Tron in Huntsville, because Toni wasn't there, Mariah was. She did a live promo. When they recapped it, Toni's pop was tremendous.
yeah.
Um, I feel like she's one of their hottest acts. So I would love to see that main event. I think that's a gigantic end to the show with her winning. And yeah, I think you're right. You're just never taking a marketing class in your life if you don't not only have Mercedes open, but I would have TNT, like whenever it's that 20 minutes before thing, I would have the graphic come up right when we're done, AEW Grand Slam, and then you have Mercedes and Harley's graphic and Toni and Mariah's graphic and whichever men's one. But I lead with that Mercedes graphic
Yeah.
and almost say opening match is going to be TBS Championship because like you're right. How many people are out there going, holy crap, that's where she went, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
You're a marketing guy, right? Like this is what you do for a living. Your marketing, your analytics, your data. I do it as
yep.
well. I used to do it, I do healthcare now, but I used to do it for actual cable TV, and I've told this story before. And for those of you out there who listen to this and might think I'm off my gorge because you listen to something on a dirt sheet or whatever, I'm telling you this from somebody who knows people in TV, in the TV land. When Fox acquired the WWE product, Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks were their pillars of their show. And they spent millions of dollars in figuring this out because they did a lot of what they call marketing tests on who has a TV face, as they call it, or who has a TV persona presence. And those are the two they came up with. That's why Becky was never drafted to SmackDown because Fox never needed her or wanted her. They would have taken her as like the cherry on the sundae, but they were like, we got to have Roman Reigns and we got to have Sasha Banks. She does have a persona and an aura to her. We're not just saying this because we're huge fans of hers. It's the truth. If AEW for once can just capitalize on some of the momentum they have with the women, next Saturday's show, Mercedes opens, Toni Storm closes. You have kind of your bookends of the company. You almost steal the NXT model with Stephanie and Julia, right? Because that's what they do every week in NXT with Stephanie and Julia, which is they make sure they're on their own segments and they're far apart from each other, but they both do well. So yeah, that's all I can hope for. So we spent the top of the show talking about AEW, and rightfully so, because they deserve it. They did a really good job this week. Let's pivot over to WWE.
Yep.
Did you get a chance to watch not NXT, the NXT stuff, but did you get because we'll get there, but did you get a chance to watch Raw and SmackDown with the women? And I mean, let's just call it what it is at this point. Let's start with Charlotte Flair. She was everywhere this week on
She
TV.
was.
What did you think about her three segments? Rhea, Julia, Tiffany.
Yeah, so she was everywhere. I like that they did that with the winner. I think it elevates Julia, right? That uh, which you could say she did that before, but we all knew she was beating Rhea, so that's why we weren't excited about her doing the NXT thing before. Um, if she takes that Julia match, she better be ready to lose. That's all I would say. But from a top level standpoint, it's great to have her on NXT. Did the little four horsewoman thing with Bailey, which got a little pop from everyone. But I'll focus on the main stuff. So we had Chrissy on the show last week. Shout out Chrissy, thank you
Hmm.
again. And Chrissy was like, I totally see Rhea Charlotte 3. And you and I were like, really? And it's funny is after Raw and SmackDown, I would almost sign up for that over the Tiffany Charlotte thing. I don't think Tiffany's ready for babyface top of the card. Um, I'll let you talk about that more because you're a Tiffany fan, and I think it's more genuine coming from you. Let me touch on Rhea and Charlotte. Charlotte is already kind of she's Charlotte. She's back. She's Charlotte. She is what she is. What I liked about that segment last week was that's the Rhea that I like. That's the Rhea that I love as a fan. That last line where she was basically like, "You beat me once, I beat you once. I'm not the person you fought before, and basically, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you." And the intensity behind that promo met the moment for me for Rhea. That's what I want. It has nothing to do with Dom. It has nothing, it was just like, I'm better than you, and I am absolutely willing to drop you on your head to prove it. That lit something in me. Um, and then I didn't feel like the Tiffany Charlotte interaction. I got Alexa Bliss 2017 vibes from Charlotte, you know, and it wasn't a good look. It wasn't a great segment for Tiffany. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you, and I agreed with Chrissy last week. Now, when she brought up Charlotte versus Rhea 3, something I did not see and even think about as a thing. After watching this week's TV, Tiffany versus Charlotte of the three options is actually on TV the third worst of the choices. Yet I think it's going to be the match they go with.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'll get the easy stuff out of the way. Rhea Charlotte was really good. Rhea was excellent. Charlotte was excellent because Charlotte can't really look at Rhea and downgrade her because the last time they faced, she lost to her. Rhea has the fire back of I'm Rhea Bloody Ripley. Like,
right.
I don't care who you are. I'll beat you, and I'm going to beat you because I don't like your tone and I want to beat you some more. Loved it. Didn't think I would, but I was like, okay, if they're going to go in this direction, let's keep this intensity going. Boom.
Yeah,
I get the NXT. I'm like, okay. She comes out, she adds a little spice to the Julia Bailey Roxanne triple threat. Who am I going to face? Is it my old nemesis Bailey? Is it the prodigy Julia woman? You have aura, you have everything, you're a superstar. I would love to get in the ring with you. I was like, "Oh, I can get with this Charlotte. This was a good promo. I'm on board." And then we get to SmackDown. I have always had reservations as a Tiffany fan that she's capable of being this super babyface. She's capable because the crowd cheers for her, right? So they do cheer for her and they love her and they make her signs. So she's over, which is the hardest thing to be. The segment, if we're being honest, sucked. And it
yeah,
sucked because Tiffany is uncomfortable in this role. She's uncomfortable. She is not as confident as she is as being the mean girl. Like the
right.
NXT Tiffany would have never allowed Charlotte to chew her up and spit her out like that. She looked nervous. She looked hesitant. She looked unsure of herself. And I'm like, oh my God, you're the actual champion. Like you're the champion. not
Yep.
Charlotte. You beat Nia Jax, somebody who has a winning record over Charlotte. And I think until Nia came out, I thought that was doing Tiffany no favors, that whole segment. I thought she looked really bad. And to your point, instead of Charlotte being the Bailey type of veteran or the Mercedes type of veteran who says, "Oh, she's kind of drowning. I got to help her." Charlotte just threw more gas on the fire. It's like, "Oh, you're drowning.
Just buried her.
Let me just let me push you down some more." And the way she treated Tiffany, I would have thought Tiffany was Harley Cameron and Charlotte was Mercedes. It's like Tiffany's never won a match in her life. Why are you even in my ring? Hit the bricks. Tiffany's the damn champ. She
Right.
beat Nia. Yeah.
The difference between well, and this is a writing thing, right? The angle they took on Charlotte respecting Julia, who's an
Hmm.
NXT champion, versus not respecting Tiffany, who's this, the champion on the main roster, was interesting, right? Because she did pay respect to Julia, um, and had none of it for Tiffany. Tiffany, it was like, hey, I came back to work and they're letting. She basically said, I came back to work and they're putting children in charge,
Yeah.
and it's not going to last very long now that I'm here.
Well,
That's
and then the other promo that the other part of the promo that was nonsensical, and I don't know why the writers would let her say this. She's like, we're doing record numbers in pay-per-views and arena sales and ticket sales and all of this with me on top. It's like, what? You had the belt for 2 weeks. What are we talking about here?
yeah,
And it's like, I understand, using the success of WWE as a talking point. Like if like Rhea Ripley can get in Flair's face and say, "While you were gone, I was carrying this company and we were doing record numbers." That's actually legitimately true with Rhea Ripley. It's a really valid, hey, the four horsewomen, you guys are washed. We don't need you anymore. We're carrying it.
right.
It doesn't work with Tiffany. It's just they had magic with the mean girl Tiffany, but then she got too over. And now they're like, "Oh, what do we do?" It's the Alexa Bliss 2017 problem
You know what's
where,
funny?
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
It's like Mercedes, it's like Sasha Banks 2015-16 2.0. We Want Sasha was created from a character who gave no shits, right?
Hmm.
Like she was wanted to be the best. She was a mean girl. And when they had her feud with Charlotte on main roster, what they do? They baby faced her. Now, Tiffany's got a long way to go to be 2016 Sasha Banks as the babyface, because it's not it wasn't Mercedes wheelhouse, but she had some damn good promos against Charlotte. So
Hmm.
if Tiffany's going to be put in this position, she's got to find her footing, be a little bit more bold, right? You can't just be like a bubblegum baby face. You got to be a little mean, and you just got to they got to figure out the writing to make it work so that she reminds people of who she is. She can't be. She was a completely different character last night. She was all
Yeah,
shucks last night.
she was. She was. And
Or Friday night.
no, you're right. Like Tiffany to me is at her best. Like, you remember when she lost to Becky, she lost the belt to Becky? People
Yeah,
were outraged that how dare you take Tiffany's title from her? Like she was so over and hot. People were mad. People were legitimately happy that she beat, like the way she beat Nia and she outsmarted her, the way she had that viciousness. She takes the briefcase, beats up Nia, beats up Bianca, beats up Candice. That's what I want to see. She gets in the ring with Charlotte and she looked like an amateur, and they did not help her. Charlotte did not help her. And then the worst part is, it's like I'm listening to her have these promos and they're bad, and the crowd is cheering her, but they're like, hmm, I'm gonna cheer you, Tiffany, because I still like you, but I don't know why I'm cheering you. Like, you actually haven't said anything that makes me want to cheer you, but I'm going to cheer you because I like you. And
You you
yeah,
just gave the perfect fix. You just gave the perfect fix. Outsmarted, right?
yeah,
What they need to do to give Tiffany her footing in this feud, if this is the WrestleMania feud, she's got to trick and embarrass Charlotte. And that will get
hmm
Charlotte to pick her, and that won't make her look like such a pushover. But she's got to outmaneuver Charlotte and just almost kind of like get the crowd to laugh. Like she's got to outmaneuver her and just kind of like dunk on her,
yeah.
and that will get Charlotte pissed off enough to pick her, and it will make her look like she's in it for the fight, right? Because that you're right, you nailed it. The coolest part about her cash in was how contrived and thought out it was. Like
Yeah.
on her side of things, she was very, very meticulous. She tricked several people to make that happen.
Tiffany is a baby face because the crowd cheers for her so much. She is very over. But the longer that this feud continues like this, she will not be over because
She will not.
you cannot cheat the fans and they know what they like. And again, I've told this story, maybe I haven't told it on this podcast, but I've certainly told it to you guys in the chat. 2017, when Bailey was in the ring in Toronto and she talked about her arm injury and the crowd booed her, and people were mad at the city of Toronto that, hey, why are you booing her? She's legitimately injured. Like, that's such a classless thing to do. And so I had friends who were in the crowd, but they were sitting. Remember when Raw used to have the commentators away from the stage?
Yeah. Yep.
So I had friends sitting in that area. And during one of the commercial breaks, Michael Cole takes his headset off and he's like getting up, getting water, whatever. And Michael Cole said, that was really shitty of you guys to boo her, like, when she's like legitimately injured. Like, it's not like she's working anybody. And some of my friends yelled back, we booed not because we don't like Bailey. We're booing because we don't like what you're doing with Bailey, like how you're presenting her.
Right.
That's what's going to end up happening with Tiffany. People are going to start to boo her, not because they don't want to cheer her, because it's clear that from the day Tiffany got on the main roster, she's been over. Like,
Right.
she's been over. But you're taking what was good about her and you're stripping it from her and you're making her what she's not comfortable being, which is, I never thought Alexa Bliss was comfortable in being a baby face. And I don't think Tiffany is comfortable being a baby face. Like, they resonate mean girls on screen to me. And I,
It's so much harder to be a baby face.
yeah. Well,
Like that way.
yeah, yeah. And the thing with Alexa and Tiffany is that as great as Tiffany, has potential of being in the ring, I think we can all be honest that I don't know if she can be on the mic what Alexa Bliss was. And maybe she'll end up getting there. But like, Alexa Bliss was such a jerk that then everybody started to like her. And then it was just like they liked her persona, her look, everything. And so it got to a point where she made all the baby faces look really, really bad. And then she wouldn't help them. She would add to it. The when does Sasha Banks ever defend her title? It's like, ugh. And then she actually lost. It's like, ugh. She the where were you? Whatever segment was with Bailey, This Is Your Life. That
Yeah.
was awful. That was
The
one of the
worst.
worst
Yeah.
WWE segments of all time. I don't know. I think it's gonna be Tiffany Charlotte. I know Chrissy laid out Charlotte Rhea 3, and it made perfect sense now that I watch it play out on screen. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's Charlotte Tiffany.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, let's pivot over to EO and the Elimination Chamber. It feels like the person who wins the Elimination Chamber is going to fight Rhea Ripley.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Io. As of now, and we're not being alarmist, if you look on X, Io fans aren't feeling great right now, and all it takes is a promo on Monday to kind of probably get her back into things. But right now, she doesn't have a path to be in the Elimination Chamber. And if she doesn't have a path to be in the Elimination Chamber, and she doesn't have like a ready baked feud that could land on Mania right now, does she make the card? How does she make the card? I guess is people are upset. I don't think we'll spend a lot of time being upset yet, besides saying that obviously both of us would be very upset if she's not on the card. I don't know that I'm ready to write it off yet, but she doesn't have a way into the Elimination Chamber currently, which is just odd. We've talked about she's been one of the best booked women in WWE for the last year, 2 years really, if you want to go
Mhm.
bigger. So I love Roxanne being in the Elimination Chamber. Presumably going to beat Raquel. I wasn't expecting that. Looks like it's going to be a stacked um, match, but
Who's
the EO thing,
who are the okay, so help me out here. It's Liv Morgan.
yep,
We assume it's gonna be Roxanne.
or Raquel, yeah.
Okay. I don't think it's gonna be Roxanne. Everybody thinks Roxanne's gonna win. I think it's gonna be Raquel, personally.
I would be have her break the Royal Rumble record and then lose her first match on Main. I'd hate that.
Bailey interferes.
Yeah, but I also think you could make Bailey Roxanne a Mania match if they have their blow up in front of everyone at Elimination Chamber.
So it's Bianca Belair,
Bianca
Liv
and Liv are in for
Morgan,
sure. Yep,
Alexa Bliss is in.
yep,
Next week, it's the winner of Naomi and Chelsea.
correct.
I think Naomi wins.
Yes.
So you have Naomi, Alexa Bliss, Bianca, Liv. Who and the two, and is there somebody else who's already made it?
Whoever wins Roxanne, Raquel,
Okay.
and then whoever wins Bailey, Lyra.
Okay. Roxanne costs Bailey. Bailey costs Roxanne. So it's Lyra, Raquel,
Raquel.
Liv, Bianca, Alexa, Naomi. Are we sure that Io's way into this match isn't somebody takes Lyra out, meaning the Ivy from American Made? That's how Io gets in, Edge style. Then if you look at it, you have Alexa Bliss, Liv, Raquel. I feel like that's going to spin into some feud. I think Bianca Naomi legitimately having their blow off and breakup happens in the chamber. They're already teasing it.
That would be cool.
And then Io wins the chamber. There you go.
Well, I mean that's certainly a path in. Hell, I would appreciate the storytelling because it would take a couple layers to make that happen. So we won't have a freak out. Tune in next week. If Io's out of the chamber, we'll have a freak out next week or the week
Well, the
after.
chamber's March 1st.
Yeah, we
So
got
Io
time.
can still get into the chamber. And look, they're telling a story with Io. They don't have her and Rhea face off backstage. They don't have them subsequently. Rhea's basically apologizing to her in the ring.
Right.
There's a story coming with Io. Now, my only fear is that the story ends at Elimination Chamber where Io gets her title shot, loses, and that's how Io isn't at Mania. But I actually am going to give Triple H, and I know most people won't now because he doesn't deserve it.
He
I'm going to
doesn't.
give him the benefit of the doubt here with Io simply because he's never really gotten Io wrong, technically. He gave her a 9-month title reign. She beat Bianca Belair multiple times, which is hard to do to begin with. She lost to Bailey in the perfect kind of ending to her
Yeah.
title reign. I I don't know. I'm seeing Io winning the Elimination Chamber. I don't know how we get there. I mean, I laid out how we get there. It's actually very easy to do if you do it the way I said it, but I don't know. Like I'm kind of feeling like Rhea Io is the Mania match. Um, Only because I think it's too soon for Rhea Bianca, and I feel like it's Charlotte Tiffany. Like I
Yeah.
know that means Bailey's off the card. You know, what are we doing with Lyra? What are we doing with Chelsea? Like you
Chelsea.
have these mid card women's titles, you have women's tag belts. What are we doing with them? But I don't know, like
I I do think Bailey has a way onto the card. Um,
Lyra.
no, they love Roxanne, obviously. I think they really love Roxanne. They gave her the record, and by the way, I always rewatch the Royal Rumble because when you watch it, you're only caring about who's coming out next when you don't know the order. But I like to go back and watch the work. Two things. The work that the women did in the first 20 to 23 people was the groundwork for the greatest Royal Rumble ever. Um, the match was laid out brilliantly. Roxanne, Io, Liv, and Chelsea were basically the bumpers, right? And they're taking big moves, having fun spots. Um, the work was so good that first 20 women. Um, and they kind of pitched all of it out the window to have that mass elimination, which we're not going to get into again. But I thought Roxanne was put in a gigantic spot at the Rumble,
Hmm.
um, and
And she deserved
not
it.
lived up to it as well. I
Mhm.
mean, she was a fantastic part of that match. Um, she really is, a prodigy, and she's out there, and she's the closest reminder I've ever seen to 23-year-old Sasha Banks, where just every interaction she has with someone makes that person look like they're fantastic in the ring, and like she's a fantastic in the ring. So I'd love to think that Roxanne and Bailey could sneak onto the card. I, I saw an interview come up on X too where Bailey had said a couple months back she wants to be Roxanne's first Mania match, and it was like October or November. So maybe she can will that into existence. But I hope you're right on the EO thing. I think that would be a fantastic way to get there.
My only concern, I mean, Io gets there, is are you really going to take the title off Rhea so soon?
They're
Or
not.
Io? And they're not, right? So then, as an Io fan, I'm happy she's on the card and the match will probably be really good. But to see her lose after, last year she put Bailey over, that'd be a tough pill to swallow. But to be honest, the only champion I see coming out of Mania without the belt is Tiffany. I don't see another women's champion. I'm talking about the three main titles, not the under titles. I don't see Julia losing. Because clearly, I think when Julia loses, it'll be to Stephanie. I don't think she's
Right.
going to lose to anybody else. And clearly, Stephanie and Julia they're not doing it at this Mania. There's no way. Like, it's way too
Right.
soon. And I don't know why you would have Rhea lose. Like, if Rhea's going to lose at WrestleMania, it should be to Bianca Belair, and that's it. She shouldn't
Yeah.
lose to anybody else.
And if they're gonna have her lose to Bianca Belair and they tell it in a 5 week story, I'm gonna become the
That
Joker, as
it's
everyone
to
says. Yeah.
me, if they're gonna do Rhea Bianca this year, if we somehow get there, Rhea should win and Bianca should win next year, and they should be part one and two. Like they should be Cena Rock. Like
Have
they
to.
should
If it, yeah.
they should do it that way. Tiffany's the only champion, unfortunately, I see losing because I gotta be honest, if they keep booking Tiffany the way they are booking her, by the time we get to Mania, people are gonna want to see her lose anyway. Because they're not doing her any favors. And I've already kind of spilled on that because I am a Tiffany fan. I just don't understand how you could be so smart in how she actually got the title and then immediately say, okay, you're going to go into white meat, no aura babyface. And you were like this person who everybody was like waiting for that cash in, and we're like, do it, Tiffany. And then no, she didn't do it. And then she finally did, the crowd went crazy. She got such a huge pop. And then they just said, yeah, we're selling t-shirts. Let's just strip her character of what she was good for. Um,
Yeah.
so you talked about Roxanne a lot. You talked about Bailey. We didn't talk about the person who's actually the champion of NXT, but let's talk about NXT. You have coming up, I believe this Saturday is going to be a triple threat match that I think could be one of the best women's matches of the year already, in Julia defending her title against Bailey and Roxanne. What did you think of NXT this week?
I mean, NXT is the gold standard of booking women. They mixed Charlotte into that a little bit. You got Bailey, Roxanne, and Julia. I thought Cora Jade was compelling this week with the bat. And they're kind of telling, is that a babyface turn? I think coming for, there's this redemption or forgotten person story, and she's never won the belt, so I think they're setting up to have her have something relevant going on when Roxanne goes up to Maine. And there's a lot of directions you can go there. Kalani Jordan had kind of a meltdown, and they're, kind of seems like they're turning her heel um, in her feud with Jada because she beat, what was it, Carmen, right? And then the
Mm-hmm.
referee called it off. I don't know if I would have went that direction with Kalani, but I do know that, and frankly, the Tiffany discourse is a good argument for it. WWE it seems like they're very purposeful on trying to have every talent go face and heel while they're in NXT and test everything out while they're down there. And Tiffany's one of the few that they really didn't have her work face down there at all. But Kalani is like on that Willow Nightingale. She almost naturally exudes babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it seems like they have her trying a bunch of stuff out, which I don't hate it. I didn't expect it. But like, think about like Bianca Belair, who will probably never be a heel on main roster. Um, she was a heel most of the time she was in NXT. So they kind of work both sides down there. But that surprised me. But just Sean is just in his bag, man. Like, I have that show on, and I actually can't remember what the men were doing because it's really not nearly as focused in as the women's stuff.
I think for this past episode, you probably don't want to remember what they did with the men because there was the final closing segment that, given the month we're in
Tasteless, yeah.
and given the history with um this country, it's probably a segment you want to forget anyway. So I won't repeat what it was, but yeah, NXT is the gold standard. I mean, the way they book the women, I don't know what secret sauce he has going on over there, but they do it well, and they do every feud well. Jada Kalani, that's intriguing. Fallon Henley Stephanie, that's intriguing. You know, look, let's say what it was. Did you see Stephanie's promo? She talks about she's the Dark Angel, and who walks right by her? Lola Vice
Yeah.
in the parking lot.
And
So
Stephanie's such a badass. She's safe in the parking lot. That's
yeah,
that's kind of it's like
that's I think that's the coolest thing about how they have the Stephanie character working. But one of two things happen now. Does she cost her the title against Fallon Henley, or does she help Stephanie win the title, but then she's the next challenger? And the WrestleMania weekend, it's Stephanie versus Lola Vice.
that's a very big NXT match for Mania weekend, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I don't
Well,
think you can have her. I don't think you can have her. I don't want to see Stephanie get help winning, but I mean, there's time between now and Mania that she. I don't know that you have Stephanie lose. I mean, she did lose to Shotzi, so I
mhm.
mean,
But the thing is with Stephanie, though, they've done such a good job with her. like I forgot she lost to Shotzi already. Like I
Yeah.
forgot because she's such a badass. Like the way
Yep.
they present her. Look,
Yep.
if the Undertaker came out on NXT with a bike and handed the torch to Stephanie McCool the way they book her, I could totally see it. I'd be like, you know what? Stephanie's the new Undertaker. She has the aura. She has the character.
Yeah.
It's like she's an attraction. The crowd is
She's
so into
intimidating.
Steph. Yeah, the crowd is so into Stephanie. The crowd is so into Julia that my goodness, when these two finally lock up, that crowd's gonna lose their mind. And again, that's the thing. A Kalani Jordan, Jada Parker feud, I'm very interested in the direction they're going with who becomes the baby face or the heel
Right.
of the program. I don't know, man. It's just NXT is so good, and they do such. I mean, like I said, I've been racking my brains as to how Tony and Hunter don't see what this guy's doing and how he's drawing ratings with the women. Like I saw the quarter hours, I went back and I looked at it, and it's like, holy cow! Like Julia and Stephanie are the biggest stars of this show, and NXT is by far the best deal a television network got for any wrestling programming.
Right.
Like they're paying $182 million a year for AEW package. NXT is outdrawing AEW. And I know ratings aren't everything, but for what NXT is getting revenue wise, that's the one deal that I'm sure, Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, um, Nick Khan, Triple H are looking like, oh, we undersold this one. Like the
Yeah.
CW got like such a steal of a program because the show's great and it holds viewers every week. It's drawing its demo numbers. I mean historically Tuesday's a bad TV night. It's doing
Right.
really well. So yeah.
I mean, that's a pivot, right? You talk about the business side of WWE, and
Yep.
we're talking about how good um, NXT is, and unfortunately, how good NXT is one of the probable reasons for, unfortunately, there was a round of releases this week. Um, you know, several on the men's side of the roster, which, no offense to those guys, that's just not our area of expertise. But we got some women's ones to talk through. Um, Blair Davenport, um, Isla Dawn, and Sonya Deville. Now, Sonya Deville is interesting. That's a contract expiration. Um, so she can pop up anywhere, like
Hmm.
next weekend if she wanted to. Not saying she's gonna, but she's immediately available, whereas the other two will undergo the 90-day waiting period, which sucks, man. Uh, Isla, is it Isla or Isla? Like that's one of those
Isla.
things. Isla. That's one of those things I know the right pronunciation, and you get in your head about it. Isla um, posted on her Insta, May something. 90 days is a long freaking time. That
Yeah,
sucks.
it's a quarter of the year.
And so those three, um, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate side of the business. I don't think really uh Blair Davenport or Isla. I mean, Isla was pretty involved last year, right? Tag team
Hmm.
run, big
She
win
won
in
she won
the
the
at the Scottish
titles.
show.
They won they beat
Um,
they won the titles off Bianca Belair and Jade. I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty big.
yep. So tough to see. Blair Davenport has been in AEW before.
Hmm.
She's known as one of the best gaijins in Japanese wrestling. Based on what she posted, I'd see her back in Japan pretty quickly. Stardom's already retweeted her stuff. She spent most of her career over in Japan.
Hmm.
So, um, what are your thoughts?
Well, Well, okay. So you in your day job and me in my day job, you manage a lot of money in terms of budgets, and I do the
Yep.
same, but you have pointed this out multiple times in our group chat that when TKO bought WWE, when TKO Endeavor bought, or sorry, Endeavor bought WWE to form TKO, you said, look, as much money as this company is making and as much as they're charging for ticket prices and how much they're printing, these releases will still happen with the same frequency, if not more,
Or more.
more, because they're going to always look to balance their budget, balance their books. The year is coming to an end, fiscal year. We got to get these numbers to crunch, right? This is all about
Yeah.
shareholders. This is all about um, the dividends that they want to pay out. This is all about how much money they want to be on their books. And look, there's something that did happen that led to these releases. And I don't think it's just as simple as, oh, they got to balance their books, which I think that's part of the story. I think Alexa Bliss just got re-signed. Like, remember, Alexa Bliss isn't coming in cheap. Like, they're not giving her
Right.
like a minimum contract. Alexa Bliss is going to have and I know this on good authority. She got paid very well, and she deserves it. She has the numbers and metrics to back it up. Well, if you pay her that much, the three women that they released, if you combine their salaries, probably don't make 50% of what Alexa Bliss is making now. But you got to pay for it somewhere because, as you pointed out, it's a budget. So if you have
If they
10
had,
million, if you have $10
yeah.
million and this is your budget, you can have Alexa Bliss, but you got to figure out a way to get in the number.
And they probably had Alexa earmarked for, call it 4 million bucks.
Yeah.
And if her agents got her 5 million, that million has to come from somewhere. And listen, guys, we're not advocating for the darkness of how capitalism can be, though. Raj and I are both in that world in our jobs.
Uh,
And whether you agree with it or not, here's the truth. If TKO writes $100 million of profit on a publicly released a release saying, "Hey, in Q4 we're going to make 100." I'm making up a number, $100 million. They say
mhm,
100 million, and they're coming up to the end of that period of time where they've told their shareholders our profits will be $100 million. $99 million is not acceptable. That's a miss.
mhm.
And that could cause their stock price to go down. Again, I'm not advocating for the system or saying it's right or wrong, but in those cases, $90 million is not enough money because they said 100. So if they've got to look and find $1 million or $500,000 worth of expense to take off of the books, that's the way that these companies work. And the only reason we talk through it is to educate everyone on it, because this is not something that's going to go away.
Yeah.
It's not.
And
There's going to be
no.
releases all the time, no matter how hot they are.
And to be fair, none of the released parties, male or female, this week were hot. None of them. There
True.
isn't one name that I saw that I was like, oh, why did they do that? Like, and that speaks to more the creative process of WWE. Maybe they're just too bloated. Maybe they just have too much talent. Maybe they have too much rosters. They have too many people on the roster and they need to almost like have less is more. But look, if you're a honest to yourself wrestling fan and you owned a wrestling company and you had a choice of Sonya Deville, Blair Davenport, Isla Dawn on one side, or Alexa Bliss on the other, I would hope if you have any logic, you're going to choose Alexa Bliss 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Her IP alone is going to generate more revenue than the other three. I'm sorry. The business is cold. It sucks. This is going to be the new reality. I don't even think we're done this week. Like, I think this week we could see more releases. But the point is that this is where WWE gets in their own way sometimes. why do you sign people to these ridiculous contracts when you know they could, like, there are individuals on the men's side, I'm not going to name the names, who they came back to WWE after being released, got a huge contract, and it's like, why did you even give it to them? Because they've never proven they deserved the first contract.
Right. Well, that's the part that women's wrestling fans hate is we know the men's side of the roster is so much more bloated. The other thing
Yeah.
they need to get out of their way on is they had Sonya on TV doing marketing for them on the news in New York the day before. They told her they weren't renewing, and they just need to be a. It's a dark side of the business, but they just need to be a better company because they're either a billion-dollar company where this side's not talking to this side, or they're a billion-dollar company that doesn't give a crap and they used her up till the very last day, and it's just not a good look.
And they could be
Um,
both. They could be both.
it can be both. So to flip this into a positive, the women's every women's generation that grows from here forward is going to be bigger than the last.
Mhm.
Every set of women coming into NXT are going to be more ready than the past generation. This is the 2015 Brooklyn wave of women coming into their own. If you were 8 years old when you watched that match, you're 18 now, right? You're going to be 18.
Mhm.
If you were 11 years old when you watched that match, you're going to be 21. Not to mention all the stuff that's happened since then with the Four Horsewomen. And NXT is so rich with talent, and WWE ID is so rich with talent. I don't think you guys even know how many good women who've got experience in Japan are already signed on to WWE ID. We know of a handful of women who are independent only, who are very young in their early 20s, who are already tearing it up down there. There is room, I tweeted this, there is room for a well-financed non-WWE NXT-like show. And what I mean by NXT-like is it's women first. And people
Mhm.
took it as I was saying, go start a wrestling company. I am simply saying that there is room in North America. WWE is going to release more women as the younger women come up, and they're going to make mistakes. It's just a numbers game. They're going to release people who could be the next Alexa Bliss, who could be the
Mhm.
next Willow Nightingale, who could be. They're going to release good people because that person won't have gotten a chance, and then when they get a chance, they're going to catch fire. So I'm not saying a new company. I'm saying Tony needs to get his shit together, and whether he makes one of his shows women forward, there's going to be room for just a dynamic women's roster. I'm not talking about 6 months from now. I'm saying over the next 5 years, WWE is going to have to make some tough choices, and there's room for a competing women's first show like NXT is currently done. That would do great ratings.
Absolutely. I when you tweeted what you tweeted, I was like, if I if I had a dad who had, $12 billion like Tony, and he's like, look, I want you to take some of this money and do something while I'm alive, I would start a women's wrestling company.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go to Mercedes. She'd be the face. I would then go to Japan. I would figure out what it's going to take to get Mayu Iwatani to come to this company. I would talk to Saray. I would talk to Utami. And then, oh, by the way, I would wait, I would look at Willow. I would look at Chris. I would look at Mariah. I would look at Tony. I would look at, up and coming Maya World. I would look at Athena. I would look at the landscape of non WWE, like, because there are like 12 to 15 women who will be WWE lifers.
Yeah.
Charlotte,
Yeah.
Becky, Bianca. Bailey's the one that I go back and forth on because I could see Bailey leaving and I could see her staying. Like it wouldn't surprise me either way because Bailey is like a Mercedes in that sense. I,
I could see Bailey wanting to book a company with Mercedes. Like I could see that being, but that might be post career, right?
like we on the outside look at Io and Asuka sometimes and their booking and even Kyrie and we're like, oh my God, like what are you doing, Triple H? And then I actually hear Io and Asuka talk about Triple H in an interview, and I'm like, oh, they're never leaving. Like they love this guy. Like Io and Asuka will never leave WWE, which is shocking to me because they're the two. I think if you could start another promotion, boy, God, if you're gonna get Asuka and Io, the point is, we talked about a lot last week with Chrissy. Women's wrestling is a burgeoning economy. The fans
Yep.
spend money, the fans travel, the fans want to have a good time, they want to see great in-ring action. And if you give it to them, the show will draw. And I don't know why Tony hasn't taken one of his platforms, whether it's Collision, the I don't know what it's called now. It used to be Rampage. It's gone, I guess, for now, and Dynamite, and just turned one of them into an all women's show. Like I
Uh,
don't get
you
it.
said you said women's wrestling fans have a good time. It is one of the most joyous subgroups of the fandom. You go back and look at Evolution. A time was had, and if you want a hot crowd, um, book or book Mercedes Moné in the main event of NJPW in a match that's going to get 20 plus minutes. I'll give you a hot crowd. So I
Yep.
think we got good luck to Isla, Blair, and Sonia. Sonia is connected to Mercedes Moné's advocate, Kevin Undergaro.
Mm-hmm.
Actually goes way back with Maria. Maria Menounos is the one who got her the tryout on Tough Enough. So could we see Sonia in AEW? Remains to be
100%.
seen.
I think so.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I do.
And I actually think the mic work will play very well over there. And she was a very good wrestler at one point, and there's no reason she can't be again. But the mic work plays immediately.
I, I think Sonya is a underrated talent. I think she people forget her and Mandy with the Otis thing. That was one of the biggest things they had during the pandemic.
She legitimately was going to have a match at WrestleMania 35 with Asuka, and it would have
Yeah.
fit on the card.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
no one
like
would have been like, "What are you doing?"
yeah, Sonya will. I think of the three, I think you're right. Blair is probably goes back to Japan, maybe goes to AEW. I could see Isla going either way. I just see Sonya coming into AEW. I could see Sonya. It wouldn't shock me if Sonya is a Mercedes bodyguard again or a Mercedes opponent. Like it
Mouthpiece.
wouldn't mouthpiece. It wouldn't. Sonya has a lot of talent, man. Like she's not. He's the one name. Okay, her contract expired. So are we sure that they didn't offer her a contract and she said no?
There was reporting that all of the people who she's close with reached out to her to check to make sure she's okay. So, uh, I we'll know. We probably won't know, but
But if her
um,
contract expired, that means that she would have known they weren't re-signing her for a while.
maybe
Because
she was hoping
either
for 11th hour.
or they gave her a contract, she didn't like it, and she said, I want this, and then they didn't give her again. A contract expiration is totally different than a 90-day because that's a release. That's like we're going to pay you for 90 days. Here's your severance and you're gone.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens with Sonya. I have high hopes for her. There's a lot of platforms out there for somebody like as talented as she is to do well in. Japan is one, AEW is one. I mean, what if she shows up on TNA? She could be back in WWE anyway with the
I
working
don't get the
arrangement.
Yeah, I don't get the TNA thing because Indy Hartwell's out there unsigned too, and it's come up. Is she going to be up on TNA? Might as well be back in NXT WWE. I just the people who were discarded by WWE, like Indy was, had a match with Bailey and then released. I'd love to see her bet on herself a little bit bigger than just going back to TNA because TNA is clearly kind of WWE umbrella light at this point. I don't know. That's just my thought
And I
on
think
it.
that's the belt Cora Jade's gonna win.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I think she's gonna win TNA belt. So, we've kind of covered the landscape of women's wrestling, this past week, and we're gonna do another mailbag segment. It was very successful last time.
One thing real quick. Sorry.
Oh, go
One
ahead.
thing real quick. Uh Indie scene, Mercedes Moné is doing a House of Glory
Oh,
show.
yes, yes. How did I forget that?
And I'll tell you what, women's wrestling sells. I don't know how many people fit in these shows, but based on tickets I've seen posted on Twitter, this is going to be one of the more pro Mercedes crowds that have occurred in a long time. I mean, she's got a huge fan base in New York. People like Chrissy have already bought a ticket. I've seen a ton of people who are original long term members of the crew buying tickets. Um, I'm excited for this. Who the hell knows who she's going to wrestle? It could be anyone. It could be the
Megan,
Mako
it could be
match
it could
we
be Megan Bain.
it could Megan Bain. I don't think Tony wants that match happening on the independents, but maybe he doesn't have any say over that. JD, kind of the reason why we have a podcast like this where we don't just yell and scream at you guys and just trash the women. I won't say the rest of his handle. You guys know who I'm talking about. He's an announcer for House of Glory, and he's supposedly a Mercedes fan, but hates her AEW booking, and he's been pretty nasty about it. So there is some controversy over if they're going to have him announcing whatever match she has. They've been turning off the comments and all of the posts about it. So I think, Mercedes fans are protective of her, and they're going to make a pretty nice dime off of this show for her. I would love to see them not have this dude announce her match, but
Eight
we'll see
eight
what
hundred
happens.
people. 800 is the capacity of this building.
Dude, it's
It
gonna
might have
be
already sold out. Maybe.
I mean, Twitter is a very small part of the wrestling world, and I saw a bunch of people already got their tickets. So
But I mean, 800 people, right? Like in New York City, New York City is one of the hot wrestling,
yeah.
parts of the country. I mean, for the prices that I saw, $200 for ringside, plus a meet and greet and stuff. I don't see how this thing doesn't sell out easily. It's on Triller, they're streaming it as well, and that's where they're going to make most of their money. But honestly,
I could see the wrestling club showing up too. I hope
yeah,
I hope a couple of those kids get to go.
this is why she chose the path that she chose, because clearly she loves to perform in multitude of venues and multitude of promotions. And I think this is the person who's accomplished everything on the biggest stage, wanting to go back and fall in love with the art that she fell in love with.
Yep.
And sometimes when you strip away the capitalism of the big corporation, you get somebody who's earning a great living, she's making a lot of money, and she could do these things because she damn well wants to, and there's nothing you can really say that she can't do it. And I think for Mercedes, this is why she loves professional wrestling. Like she
Yep.
wants to be able to perform in front of 800 people. I saw her in DC. There couldn't have been more than 1,000 people in that building. But she was great. And I think it takes a lot of guts to do what she's doing.
I have
Everybody's
so
gonna,
much yeah.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I have so much respect for it. Um and I think she lined everything up perfectly. She's very well compensated from AEW. Um she probably does very well on her NJPW shows. And I'm not saying she's doing this show for free. She's certainly not, but she set up a path for herself where she gets to do all these things that she finds fun. I mean, if you've watched her over the years, she trains very hard. She's trained very hard for a long time. She's always been on the go, and probably someone who comes off like she likes training just as much as she likes the
Mhm.
matches. And if you think that there's a story about Chris Jericho that says he hadn't taken a bump not on TV in 15 years or something. Not all these wrestlers train, um, and she obviously loves that part of it. And so I think kind of going back to some of her roots, go into some of these areas that she's found inspiration in the past. I think it's inspiring as a fan. And, um, you know, yeah, you nailed it. This is why she's doing what she's doing. It's like, in what world did we ever think whoever she's going to wrestle just didn't seem like it was even on the plate 4 years ago? And now she's going to do a House of Glory show that's going to be very accessible for some of her biggest fans. $175 to sit at ringside, where, even a WWE house show, you can't get ringside for 175
Mm-mm.
bucks. So
No.
I just think, it's a really, really great piece of business that she's doing for her own passion and herself and for her fans.
Well, and I also think Amazing Red, who owns House of Glory, is one
Oh
of her
yeah.
mentors, and is a huge person, huge influence in the industry, influenced a lot of wrestlers, and Mercedes is one of them. And I could actually see her doing this show for not her going rate as kind of a way to pay it forward. And I think that's what's so great about this is that she's giving back to the business that gave her and has given her so much. And look,
Yep.
I will definitely be buying this thing on Triller. I want, depending on the result of a game that some maybe a small portion of America watches later, I might end up going to New York myself. But like, I want to see, I want to see this. I want to see how they present it. I want to see. I feel like it's going to be one of the better stories of the year, like her going back to House of Glory, like somebody who's main evented WrestleMania. Like this isn't a small name going back to the indies.
Right.
This is a big deal. I mean, she is a main event WrestleMania person. And look, I saw some, I don't even want to say the name, but I saw somebody on X say WrestleMania main event night oneers aren't real main eventers.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, okay, so like if you open up um at Coachella, like you have night one and night two, and you close night one, which I think like there was a night one where Beyonce closed. Are you gonna tell
Beyonce
me that?
closed night one. Yeah.
Yeah, are you gonna tell me she's not a main eventer? Like, are you gonna tell
Right.
me Beyonce isn't a main eventer because she didn't close night two? Like, no. There's WrestleMania is such a big deal. It's a 2 night event. There's a night one main event and a night two main event. And if you main event night one or night two, you are a main eventer. And
Yep.
I don't care what anybody says. She's a WrestleMania main eventer in front of a live crowd, not a pandemic crowd. And she is going back to House of Glory where there's 800 people in a building in New York. And I bet you she has just as much fun doing this as she does the WrestleMania main event. So, yeah, kudos to her, man. It's an awesome thing to see. And it's why she's one of the best ever. It's just because she takes risks and does things that are so counterculture. Um, and I'm not knocking anybody, but there are other women who make a lot of money in professional wrestling, partly because of her contract with AEW, but also because of their persona and what they earned. But I don't see any of those women saying, "Yeah, I'm making $5 million. I'm going to go wrestle at House of Glory." I just don't see it.
Yep.
And I could be wrong, but I think that list is very small. That's a very small list of people who really. It's like the Michael Jordan for the love of the game clause. That's what this is, and you know, props to her.
That's exactly it.
Mhm,
Exactly it. It's for love of the game, and I think, the way that passion's manifested itself over the last 10 years is why those of us who love her um are such big fans, because she puts everything into it. And I just think of, like, like the Oscar match, the
mhm.
first one where she's got like the tear coming down, and it's a more positive manifestation of that same passion, right? Just how much she likes this business. And um so hopefully we find out some opponents soon. We're going to get the Rev Pro announcement pretty soon
Mhm.
too, wherever that first one's going to be. But some really exciting stuff to come, paired with finally a really good feud in AEW. So things are in a really, really great spot for Mercedes. All right, mailbag. I think we're each going to read each other a question.
Mhm.
I picked one for the sake of time. Now,
Okay.
this is a really, really good question, but it is not a one-part answer. So it's going to take a couple minutes. I'm going to put some additional parameters on this, or else you and I could make 4 podcasts out of this question. We really
Okay.
could. I've known this question for 5 days, and I still don't have my answer. So, this is from Brock 316, longtime listener of the show, the moneymaker. WWE, AEW, and Stardom come together and announce they are doing a Worlds Collide all women's PLE. Okay, so open, just call it all women. HBK is in charge of the booking. Okay, so Shawn Michaels is the booker. What are the 10 matches you would have on the show? That's the question. Here's what I'm going to add you for the sake of time. Every match needs to be one-on-one, because if we get into triple threats and just getting everyone on the card, the thing is just going to go crazy. And every match needs to be women who aren't currently in the same company. I think that that's the best way to do it. Dream matches
Okay.
throughout, right? Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll start at the top. I'm gonna go match number 1, Bianca Belair versus Mayu Iwatani. Match number 2, I'm gonna go Chris Statlander, Jade Cargill. I can do
Rematch.
that. I can do that now. Yeah.
Yep.
Match number 3, I'm gonna go Bailey versus Mariah May. Match number 4, I am going to go Saray versus Julia. Match number 5, I'm gonna go Rhea Ripley versus Momo. Match number 6, I'm going to go Toni Storm versus Alexa Bliss. Match number 7, I am going to go Naomi versus Willow Nightingale.
Love that one.
Match number 8, I'm gonna go. Pardon, let me think here. Have I used Utami yet?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. So match number 8, I'm gonna go Utami versus Stephanie Vacour. Match number 9, I'm gonna go. Let me think. Okay, so I did start. I did. Trying to think of the W. Oh, okay. Sorry, I got it. Match number 9, I am going to go Tiffany Stratton versus not Saray, I already used her, but Siri.
Okay.
And my main event is going to be Mercedes Moné versus Io Sky.
Nice. You know, it's so funny. When you got to match 5 and there was no Io or Mercedes yet, I was like, oh, he's totally main eventing with Io and Mercedes.
Yeah,
So,
those
guys,
are my 10.
those are your 10. And instead of picking apart who we didn't put on the card, because it's 20 women and there's like 100 great women in wrestling, I think we should spend time on some of the great matches that you put out there, because I mean, I've known for 5 days, and I was like, who would I have? Mercedes wrestle. You know, I probably won't have Charlotte Flair on the card. You didn't either.
No.
Probably the one omission I would say you probably wish you got on there was Roxanne.
Yeah, Roxanne is one. Becky is one. I probably would take Bliss out and put Roxanne in.
Toni
Um,
Storm, yeah.
yeah, I'd probably do it like that. Becky is one. But the thing with Becky and this is not a knock on Becky or Charlotte, by the way. It's gonna sound like one, but it isn't. I'm a huge fan of Becky Lynch. I'm probably as a big a Becky Lynch fan. I'm not as big a fan of hers as I am Mercedes or Io, but she's right there for me. Or Mayu. But I don't wake up at night or stay up at night thinking, where can Becky wrestle all over the world?
Right.
I think a lot of Becky's great matches are still to come in WWE. But when I think of this type of an event, the reason I kept Becky and Charlotte out of it on purpose is because with them, booking is also a factor.
Right.
Are they going to lose? Like, if Mercedes, if you're looking at this card, like, the reason I went with Bianca, because the first match I thought it was Bianca Mayu. It's the match I really, really want to see. Is because I think I want to see Bianca Belair wrestle the best, Joshi women's wrestler in the world. Because
Right.
it's either her or Io, and Bianca and Io are magic. So I'm thinking, well,
Right.
Bianca and Mayu could be magic too, right? And I wanted to do a card without Charlotte and Becky because I got to be honest, like, I just didn't think of dream matches when it comes to them. Now, people could be like, oh my God, how could you not want to do Becky versus Momo or Becky versus Utami or Charlotte versus Chris Statlander or Charlotte versus Willow? Yeah, I mean, those are good matches too. And I got to be honest, there is probably a place for Charlotte and Becky on the card, but I missed Roxanne. That is a miss. That is a
Yeah.
miss for sure.
It's a great card off the cuff. Again, I probably don't have a solid 10 and I've had days to think about it. I love the Bianca Mayu. I
Hmm.
mean, that's a fantastic match. Um, you had Rhea Momo, right?
Hmm.
That's a great match because Rhea's, in this dream world, Rhea's not taking a pin on a Worlds Collide card. So that's a good match that she could have a great match and win without, a lot of fanfare on that she beat someone. Bailey versus
Who did I say?
shoot,
I did I say Bailey versus
should have wrote
it
it
was
down.
is somebody is some wasn't it somebody in AEW? Oh, Mariah May, I think I said.
Oh yeah. Yep. So
Yeah.
that would be a fun one. You'd hope that you'd have a build because their build would be really, really good. The mic skills back and forth. I loved the Willow and Naomi
Naomi. Yeah, that
match.
one's
Um, I want you to ask the mailbag question you have for me. So I just what I to keep politics of backstage out of it. And if Sean's the booker, I didn't want to put Sean in a weird position with Mercedes and a WWE woman. So for my card, I thought the best match was the Mayu Mercedes rematch. And on American soil, Mercedes gets her win and then, loses the third match at some point over there in Japan. But I thought that if in this dream world, that's the perfect place for for that rematch. But I will say the idea of Mayu and Bianca is just an incredible match. Um, Mercedes, and it's funny enough because of what she's doing with her career, most of the dream matches now are starting to become rematches because we've
yeah.
been getting so many of the dream matches, which is awesome. The one match that didn't happen based on all the women you've used is she's never really wrestled Rhea Ripley. But I don't know that I'd put HBK in that position.
The reason I wanted to keep Rhea and Mercedes away from each other is because I do think that I feel like that's a feud where you can't really win no matter who wins. Like
Right.
you're gonna have like a weird split of the audience. And I think Mercedes and Io deserve to wrestle in front of a crowd. And they
That's
never
a
got
great
that
point.
chance, right? And
They
that's
they
why I picked
didn't.
them. But Bianca and Mayu is a match that I have been wanting for a long time. And obviously, it's going to be very difficult because I just don't see Bianca exploring the indies. Like, she just doesn't
Yeah,
strike me as that person. And as somebody who has actually met Bianca Belair in person at a mall of all places in Orlando, she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. And she's super, super humble. But she's never been in a position of struggle in her wrestling career. So I don't see her going back to it. Like, people have to understand, unless you have a lot of money, indie wrestling is very expensive for the performer themselves in
Yeah.
terms of costs. So okay, so my question for you, it's actually he gave me two questions. So I have a friend of mine who goes to the cycle studio I'm part owner in, and he's a humongous wrestling fan, and he is actually one of the first people who ever listened to our podcast. His name is Michael Getz, and it's when we did the episode, but we weren't even on Spotify, and we had the audio file link that you sent me, and I sent it to him.
Oh,
Like,
well,
he's
thanks,
like,
Michael, for
yeah,
being that's an early adopter. Yeah.
he's been listening from episode one. And I remember his knock about episode one was there's no Rhea Ripley. And because he's a humongous Rhea Ripley fan. So his
Right.
two-part question, one is about the women, one is about the men. So I'll give you the simple one first. Who should Rhea Ripley fight at WrestleMania? And then who should she lose to at WrestleMania if she loses at WrestleMania? So I think this one's easy. This one's like straight down the middle of the plate.
Like lose to at a future WrestleMania.
Yeah, future WrestleMania.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have her beat. I would have her beat Io this year, and I would have Bianca beat her next year. I mean, that's pretty. I think there's a lot of money to be made having Rhea have a 16-month title run that Bianca ends at next year's Mania. I think that's a money making. I just think you sell a lot of tickets that way. No one can beat her, and Bianca's our last hope is basically what you're selling on that one. So
Mhm.
that's easy for me. That's wrestling 101. And the simplest thing is not always the worst thing. It's usually the best thing. That's why it's the simplest thing. And so yeah, that's and I think her and Io put on an incredible match this year. Even with her winning, it's probably the best women's match on the card, which I think does great for both of them and their careers. So
That's the easy question. So here's
all
the
right.
hard one. So this individual I'm talking about, Michael, he is a ginormous John Cena fan, to the point where he has admitted to me in front of his wife, who I also know, Victoria, shout out to you, my future dentist. He said in front of her, in front of me, he is going to cry when John Cena retires. He is going to cry. And he is thinking about going to Vegas to see his quote unquote last WrestleMania. So here's the question. Who should John Cena's last match be with ever? But here's the caveat. He should win. He wants John Cena to win his last match. So now you have to pick who his last match ever is going to be with, provided that John Cena has to win.
So since this fan is a John Cena fan, I'm going to book it in a way that a John Cena fan would enjoy. Okay. Um, I'm gonna have Cena win the title at Mania and go on a run where he has the title. I know some people are building it where he wins the title in his last match. I just don't think that's good for the belt. So I struggle with that, right? That's not good for the belt. Um, so if we're gonna go full nostalgia, I go John Cena wins his belt, breaks the record at Mania. You do that on the biggest stage. And then he holds the title throughout the summer. And then he loses it at SummerSlam. His last match is going to be Survivor Series.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have Randy Orton cause him to lose the belt, and him and Randy do a nice little 3-month feud because that when I think of John Cena, I think of Randy Orton or CM Punk. Um, I'd love to see him beat Randy in his last match.
Okay, Randy
I don't
Orton.
know if that's going to be popular or not. I don't think you want him beating a young guy in his last match and pinning CM Punk or Randy Orton as the final check mark of I was the guy. I think is if you're going to have him win, that's how you win, or that's how you finish it off. I mean, Randy had a really good year when he's not been injured. So Randy's in a good spot. It'd be a good win for John to beat him.
I think that you probably have the answer. Michael wants John Cena's last match to be against Cody Rhodes, and he wants him to beat Cody Rhodes
For the title
and
and just
for the
win it
title.
and
Yep,
vacate it.
yep. And he was very upset that Jey Uso won the Rumble. Very upset, which is not an unpopular opinion, but a lot of people wanted CM Punk to win the Royal Rumble, not John
Right.
Cena. So, Michael, like I said, Cena is his GOAT. Cena's the best ever. Um, he's one of those, he's humongous John Cena fan. And, he just said, I want to see him win on his last match. I want people to carry him out of the ring and all that. And I told him, you know, those are good dreams, but in wrestling, a true professional wrestler loses his last match, not
Yeah.
wins it. You don't win. Like the way Ric Flair went out in WWE was the perfect way to go out. That
Right.
is how you do it. You have the person who's your successor beat you and move on. So that was first male wrestling question. But yeah, Michael has been with us since day one. So I told him, for you, I will make the exception.
Appreciate Michael listening. Yeah, no, it's tough. I think the number one thing we could definitely guarantee for Michael is that Cena is going to be very involved for 9 months, and they're not going to do that in a sloppy way. So we may not have all the answers, but I can only imagine for someone who loves John Cena the way it sounds like he does, that this will be one of his favorite years in wrestling because he's not just going to be showing up for 5 minutes. He's going to be probably the central storyline for a long part of this. So, and well deserved. It's John freaking Cena, man.
Yep. So we have come to the end of our podcast this week. Um, you could see by my hat, I have something a little important happening later.
Hugely
So,
important.
it's a little bit of a game. Maybe I don't know, 150 million people will be watching it. And again, I am not as confident as fellow fans of this team are currently. They are very confident. I am not. I tell people this all the time. We could be this amazing team, but when Darth Vader and Lord Palpatine are on the other end, I don't know. And so for me, I'm not gonna enjoy the game unless we win. And I have to accept that. And I have
Yep.
to understand that we can't win the Super Bowl unless you get to the Super Bowl. So what I was telling a lot of my fellow Eagles fans in the group chat I have is, look, I know if we lose, it's going to be crushing. I get it. But we can't win the game unless you get to the game. So you have to get to the game.
Yep.
And there are 30 fan bases, 28, 29, I don't know what the number is, who would just want to be like, they would be happy to get to the game. Not saying they'd be happy to lose, but they would be enjoying the moment more
Yep.
than I think our fans are enjoying the moment. Like, I think we're looking at this like, if we don't win, it's a failure. And maybe
It's a
that's
tough.
true. Yeah.
It's a tough spot to be. It's in every sport. Like if the Lions were to have made the Super Bowl this year, I'd be on house money right now. Like, of course, I'd want them to win, but I would be able to walk away if they lost and said, "Hey, we've never made a Super Bowl and we made it."
Yeah.
When you've been good for as long as the Eagles have been good with this new set of players, right? yeah, you guys won a Super Bowl in 17, but you
Mhm.
want Jalen Hurts to win a Super Bowl, and so
Yeah,
that's why it
I want
matters so
this
much.
group. I want this group of players to win a Super Bowl. Look, I don't take it for granted. This I told this story at the barbershop yesterday. I was an Eagles fan before 2000. I was an Eagles fan late 80s. We sucked. We had a great defense. We had Randall Cunningham, and we had nothing else. And our best teams before the 2000s were early 90s, and we had to play the Cowboys or the
Yep.
Redskins or the Giants, who all won Super. Like I tell people, it doesn't look like it now. Like no Lions fan or Jaguars fan or Texans fan or Giants fan, maybe not Giants, but like Commanders fan is going to feel sorry for Eagles fans now. I get it. But think about it. What if Billy, the Vikings won a Super Bowl? Then the Packers won. Oh, no. Then the Bears won a Super Bowl. And then the Packers won two in a row. How would you feel as a Lions fan if that happened 4 years in a row?
Not great. And that's your
So that has
1990 to
happened to me.
1993. I know.
That has happened to me in my life, right? So I remember being a fan of the team that couldn't win the Super Bowl in the division that had all the Super Bowls.
Right.
Now, from 2000 to present day, we have the second most playoff wins behind the Patriots, and the Chiefs are like 2 games behind us. So it's like we have had sustained excellence, but we forget it because we only have one Super Bowl title. But we've also made three in 8 years. That
Yeah.
isn't anymore. We're not anymore a cool story that's happy to be here. We
Yeah.
got it. We aren't the
Got to win.
hapless underdog. So I like everything I've heard out of the team. But again, the guy on the other side is the problem. It's not anything else because that guy has 3 Super Bowl wins and all have been double-digit comebacks. That guy has lost 2 playoff games or 3 playoff games. Two are to a guy who's in the booth tonight, and then the other is Joe Burrow. So it's like he's 17-3 in the playoffs. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? As any wrestling fan listening to this show will be familiar with, to be the man, you got to beat
You
the
got no,
man.
and that's fair. And a lot of my Eagles fan friends tell me this is what we wanted. Like,
Yep.
let's be honest. If it was Buffalo, if it was Baltimore, if it was Houston, even if we win, we would still be like, yeah, we won. But when we beat Tom Brady to win the first title, there was no yeah, but. It was like, we beat Tom Brady. That's
100%,
a
dude.
Super Bowl, right?
I
So if
wanted the
we
Chiefs all year for my team. I
if
hope
we
you guys
wanted
stomp them.
if we win 2 Super Bowl titles and one is against Tom Brady and there's against Patrick Mahomes, we literally become the antiseptic to the cure of the dynasties. Like we are the outlier. And there's something to be said about Philadelphia that has that aesthetic. But yeah, like look, I felt like I was robbed of a Lions Eagles NFC title game this year, which is the game I really, really wanted to see because again, Eagles fans are like, yeah, we want Detroit because they've been the top dog in the NFC. But then after we did what we did to the Commanders, after the Commanders won in Detroit, then that kind of went away pretty quickly. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. But this is different, because nothing on paper about this game tells me we shouldn't have a chance to win. But then that's also what scares me the most, and we'll see.
Yep. So, I wish you all the luck. We are rooting
Thank
for
you.
you. I think a lot of America's rooting for you. I unbiasedly would tell you that lose, it's going to be because Patrick Mahomes. And if you win, it's going to be because you guys have the better team than they do in more areas. And that's Captain Obvious, but
That's
that's
pretty
how it's going to go.
much
It's going to take a Patrick Mahomes classic to beat you guys because I think you guys are the better team. And we'll be rooting for you, man. And
eh,
hopefully we have a little mini celebration for you on next week's
well,
episode.
let's hope, and it's the only time in my life living in Texas, and I live in cowboy country. that I have walked around this city with Eagles stuff on, and it's the only time people are coming up to me, "Go Birds, go Birds." Like, it's gotten to the point where Cowboy fans are cheering for the Eagles. You know, you have to be some kind of a villain on the other end for
Right.
Cowboy. The only person who doesn't want the Eagles to win in my neighborhood, he's a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. My neighbor Nathan, and he said, "Look, I'll be honest with you. If the Eagles win, I can't really argue with anybody telling me Jalen Hurts is better than Josh Allen. I really have nothing to say anymore. He beat the
Yeah.
guy who Josh Allen can never beat in the playoffs."
Right.
So that's it. But on that note, let's end there. If I make it through today, I'll see you guys all next week.
All right. Good luck, my friend, and thanks
Thank you.
everyone for listening again.